Unlock the future of pathology with Pathology News, your ultimate source for cutting-edge insights, expert analysis, and the latest breakthroughs in digital and computational pathology. Don't just stay informed, stay ahead.
Ladies and gents, hello and welcome to our latest podcast from Pathology News. Today, I'm very pleased to be speaking to one of the most important leaders in our industry, Ben Cahoon, who is CEO of Techcyte. And Techcyte are a very exciting company at the moment. I'm looking forward to hearing about their fusion platform for pathology. Ben, hi, welcome to Pathology News.
Thank you. It's good to be with you today.
Great. Well, let's start before we get on to talking about the Fusion platform. Let's hear something about you and your career. What's your background and how did you come into this world of pathology analysis, pathology information system?
Yeah, great. So at my core, I'm a techie. So I came out of school in computer science and was really fortunate to work for a really good company at the time, Intel. And I was part of the first software division inside of Intel. So it was a great experience. They eventually paid me to go back and get my MBA. So sort of combined the business end with the technical end. And that was really just a foundational start with a great company.
Great. Rare skills to go together, high level of technical capability and business as well.
So eventually, I did leave Intel and got more entrepreneurial. And so since really 2003, I've been building software companies, everything from an educational software company that we sold to Lenovo, and that eventually became Lenovo Software, to a fintech company that we started in Luxembourg. So got to move my family over to Europe for a year. And that was just a great experience for myself and the family. And we actually met some people in Luxembourg that are now, part of Techcyte. So that's where our Techcyte European headquarters is, in Luxembourg. So we loved that group there and had a great experience there. And then came back and was introduced to Techcyte.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're a bit of a serial entrepreneur, is that fair?
That's definitely fair. And I have had some entrees outside of tech as well. So I've built some, 45 townhomes in Moab, which is sort of like the mecca for sports in Utah. So tried some other things, but my heart is really in software. I love software. I love, being able to create something out of nothing. And then from a business perspective, put all of the strategy pieces in line to create a successful software company. So that's really who I am at my core.
Great, fantastic. And then obviously you saw something in Techcyte because you joined Techcyte in 2015?
Yeah, late 2015. Our current chairman, who is the founder of Techcyte, he's a super successful investor here in the Utah Silicon Slopes ecosystem. And I met him and did some business planning. And when I saw Techcyte, I was like, that out of all the companies he was involved in, that was the one I wanted to be involved with. So Techcyte had started as a tech transfer out of the University of Utah in late 2013. Rick Smith, he very similar to my background, computer science MBA. Rick and Ralph joined together and were initially going after Lyme disease. And when I came in and really looked at Lyme disease and the prototypes that they built, at that point, we decided to sort of change the underlying architecture of the platform and also the corporate strategy. So in early 2016, I invested, brought some other engineers that had also had exits. They also invested, and we really started the company and down the current path that we've been on at that point.
Mm-hmm. And I was very excited actually reading your website, looking at the Fusion platform, which seems to be something a little bit different than most of the things we come across when I'm having conversations with founders in digital pathology, because clearly Fusion is a platform for general pathology workflow. It's incorporating a lot of pathology disciplines into a single platform. So talk me through that. Where did that idea come from? And when did you launch Fusion?
Yeah. So the whole concept and sort of the core philosophy that we've had at Techcyte from a corporate strategy perspective is we knew the human market, both clinical pathology and anatomic pathology, were going to take a long time. And that just definitely played out. I think we've all, as an industry, been frustrated with how long it's taken for this whole thing to get adopted. So luckily we saw that early on and built a company that could endure and last. Meaning as a startup, you've got to get revenue and you've got to find places so that you can survive. And one of the company that we built with inside of Intel was a platform. And so I've taken a lot of those learnings and I've seen that play out over now 30 years. And so I knew that the platform was the right strategy. So when we set up this corporate strategy, it was a platform across environmental labs, veterinary labs, and as well as human. And veterinary and environmental is way less regulated, and the adoption can be faster, and the iterations and the innovation can happen quicker. So we've used those industries while we're going after the human market, and all at the same time. Now, early on, when you talk to people who are funding, your company, VCs were like, you guys are just you're not focused at all. And really what they didn't understand is that we actually were super focused on the platform. And if you build the platform in the right way, it will then enable you, I would love to talk about partnerships today. Like, it'll enable partnerships to help you get to market.
Right.
It's very difficult to be great at everything. And so here at Techcyte, we're really good at AI, workflow, SaaS platform. And then we've used partnerships to get the expertise that we've needed, whether that's medical or commercialization in each of these different markets that we've gone after.
Great. And the input to your process generally is digital information, a digital image, for example.
That's correct.
And so that means that you are scanner agnostic. You work with a whole different companies, or you probably recommend scanners, I would imagine, do you?
Yeah. Let me tell you sort of the evolution of the platform and scanners, because it's been quite the learning process. So in the vet market and also the environmental market, they sort of, because of the less regulation and we could go faster, we established a key partnership on the veterinary side with Zoetis. And with Zoetis, the first application was parasitology. When we took some initial slides, some parasitology slides, which is a wet mount preparation, and put that in the, all the existing scanners that we're all familiar with today on the anatomic pathology side of things, you literally just got a blurry image. Because you can imagine a wet mount preparation, the scanners were just not prepared for it. So we worked with a bunch of different scanners and created some techniques through fiducials on either the cover slip or the slide to teach the scanner where to focus and then get a good image. On the veterinary side, Grundium ended up being just the most amazing partner and platform for scanning in veterinary clinics. So I think we've sold jointly with Zoetis, our veterinary partner, and Grundium, well over 9,000 scanners. So it's probably one of the most I can't think of another scanning platform that's more broadly deployed than Grundium. So we worked with Grundium. We learned how to scan initially fecals, then it went to blood. And then urine was another really challenge, because again, most of these scanners are designed for tissue. So when you give it a urine slide, we use that same fiducial trick and IP to basically look at the fiducials on the slide and then come up from there. So that that led to a core capability within the company of liquids and cells. So a lot of our early AI was looking at mold, was looking at blood, looking at fecal, and that led to eventually gram stains. And we just got really good at finding very, very small objects and being able to count and classify and do semi-quantitative grading for clinical pathology type samples. That bled over a little bit into AP. We did a cervical cytology solution. And so once we developed that, we did a partnership with BD. If you think of the cervical cytology market, it really is Hologic and BD. Those are the two biggest prep techniques. And so we partnered with BD and sell a solution that it's not totally scanner agnostic, but it does work with multiple scanner vendors like Pramana, Gundam, Modic, 3D Hystat, Hamamatsu. So it is pretty scanner agnostic as long as the scanners can do Z stacking on cervical cytology prep. So that has eventually led to our relationship with Mayo Clinic and developing the Fusion AP platform, which we launched at US CAP this year. And at that point, we became the only platform to have both AP, anatomic pathology, and CP, clinical pathology, in one platform. And from that perspective, on the AP side of things, we are very scanner agnostic. One of our core philosophies in building Fusion AP was that it needed to be built on standards. And so we are fully all in on the DICOM standard. And I just have a core belief that I learned like when I was back at Intel, that when an industry adopts standards, that's when you truly that adoption will increase. So we've got a fully DICOM compliant, both from metadata and viewing, a viewer, and being able to have DICOM annotations come in. So we're all in on DICOM and helping each of the scanner vendors, whether they do a conversion or they output to DICOM, will view that in the viewer.
That's really exciting. So you've done really quite a lot of work with, scanners. We need a broader term than that, but the input devices that capture the image, which, obviously can be cameras or scanners. So you've worked with those companies to improve the point of input to your software so that you can then provide analysis, you can put together a workflow, a lab workflow. And then on top of that, you're also adding image analysis, AI, as we'd call it now, as well. So talk to me a little about that piece, because do you develop that or do you use third parties for your AI?
Yeah, great question. So for most of our time as a company, we've been developing our own AI and pairing that with workflow. And what we've seen is that's really where the magic happens. That's where you get efficiencies and accuracies and just the ROI benefits that everyone's after. So because we had been so focused on clinical pathology and the liquids and cells, we never thought, oh, let's go digital and then add AI. We, from the very beginning, were pairing AI plus workflow. So that meant we created our own pipelines to be able to do initially just object detection, to be able to find, count, and classify. And one of the first algorithms that we did was in mold. And this has actually ended up being a really, really challenging problem. Our mold classifier has 160 different classes, and most of those classes are very, very similar. So you've got a basidiospore, and as an example, you've got a basidiospore and an aspen or aspergillus. Those are 3 to 5 micron circles that look very, very similar. So when we initially started down this AI path, it looked like an impossible task. And over time, we just kept, through a lot of trial and error, we just kept getting better and better and better. So now we can develop really good algorithms. And probably the best example of that, of looking at really small objects, is we jointly developed with Mayo Clinic a gram stain classifier. And so we can count and classify and do semi-quantitative grading for gram stains. And that will work across a Keystra prep, a Copan prep, or even a manually prepped slide. And that all started off, if you look all the way back, it started off with, an environmental test for mold.
Wow. So in fact, working in the world of bacteria, mold, spores, that has really informed the other applications as well. It's allowed you to develop expertise in image analysis, which obviously impacts, anatomical pathology down the line.
Absolutely. So when we went down the path about a year and a half ago of expanding the platform to anatomic pathology, we realized, we've been going to the digital pathology conferences really since 2016. And so we went eyes wide open into the fact that there was no way that Techcyte, even with great partners like ARUP and Mayo, that we were going to be able to create all of the AI that would be needed in this industry. And so with Fusion AP, we opened up and basically created an ecosystem where third-party vendors can now come in, integrate with the platform, expand the capabilities of the platform in whatever area, makes sense. So we've announced integrations with Iforia and Aosin, MindPeak, Deep Bio. So all of the AI companies that are just pure play AI can now come in and take advantage of all the workflows, all the integrations with the clinical data systems such as the EHR, the LIS, even PAC systems. Bring all that data together so you can infuse the workflows with AI.
Great. So you are an information and AI company, a workflow company, and you're integrating both upstream and downstream in the market.
Correct.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And when you look at anatomic pathology, there's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of use cases. It starts off with frozen section, right? So we've got a solution with frozen section, even communicating back and forth between the OR and the pathologists. We, again, working with our partner Mayo to really create a cool solution there. So starting off with frozen section all the way through, traditional surgical pathology and all the subspecialties. Now that we've got this platform, we will be building subspecialty suites that, again, the whole goal is to get the efficiency and accuracy that the industry needs to have an ROI. Yeah. As we all know, reimbursements are always declining. Just the labor shortages that the whole world faces are not going away anytime soon. So we really do need AI infused with workflow to get to the accuracy and efficiency that we need to expand out the availability of pathology to the people that need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of in my mind, what you're doing is really with this integration piece that, I'm imagining a pathologist working in a lab on a particular diagnosis, and he or she suddenly has to go and find the molecular data or the surgical data, maybe some radiology, and those may be on different computer systems. And what you're doing here, you're integrating this in a single platform. So all that data is there in front of you. That's very powerful. I do get that. And how do you find that? Because obviously we're in this world at the moment, and and I'm talking about AP now, but scanning platforms have been around for 20 years, more than that. And suddenly that's been in some ways quite a difficult sell, because the business case was never quite there for a pure scanning platform, because it created an extra step, extra time. A lot of pathologists might say, well, I don't have the resolution, and I'm so fast with the microscope, and they are very fast when you watch them actually using a microscope and flipping through slides. But then the artificial intelligence, the computer analysis of the tissue, of the morphology, has suddenly come in and is now getting to the stage where in many disciplines it's as capable as the pathologist in making decisions. But these makes, as few mistakes as the pathologist. have you found that image analysis has sort of changed the game a little bit, and changed the business case for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer, and we've seen this play out over many years, that AI plus humans is going to get you the best result. So if you look at what we've done in parasitology or gram stains or any of those, areas where we have like literally years, ARUPs have been in production with our solution since 2019. So in those instances, we are taking tests that take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes and getting it down to 15 to 30 seconds. So that's a pretty big efficiency gain on a very simple test, like looking for parasites or doing a semi-quantitative grading on a gram stain. If you bring that now to anatomic pathology and you're combining AI and the ability to use AI, I almost think that a diagnosis is actually not the most important thing that AI can provide in the whole pathology workflow. I actually believe that reporting, being able to speed the time and will decrease the time that it takes to generate a report is probably almost an even bigger opportunity. So tight integration between the viewer and reporting, being able to bring in LLMs and summarize patient history and get that out and generate a report, pre-ordering stains, case prioritization, all those sort of workflow items. I think, pathologists are awesome and they're amazing at saying this is cancer. But then they get tied up with all of the things that are needed to generate a synoptic report or just a report. I think that's where a lot of the efficiency gains will come from. And so again, you're pairing a tool that is going to make them more efficient. And that's what we've seen in the other areas. That's where the magic happens. And that's where you're going to get efficiency and accuracy.
Yeah. So it's the optimization of workflow, creating efficient workflow, which saves time for the overworked pathologist and saves time for the patient who's waiting for an answer. Yeah, I absolutely get that. And what about sort of, it's an interesting market. And again, I'm thinking mainly about anatomic pathology here, but we see adoption happening still at a relatively slow pace, although that's picking up worldwide. And there are a few government initiatives now around digitization, but it is still there is still a large cost to going digital. There is still some resistance among certain sectors of pathologists who still think they're more efficient with their microscope and resisting the new technology. And at the same time, we're taking this old probably 400-year-old device called the microscope, this analog device, and bringing in new digital technology. And that is happening very slowly. We also then have regulation, organizations like the FDA who are pushing down on this a little bit and, recently tried to regulate LDTs. And this whole AI piece is going to be a mixture of need, of cost, and of regulation. So how do you see the adoption kind of curve going from this point onward?
Yeah. I mean, you've highlighted some of the key issues: cost, regulation, and I think at the end of the day, AI is, I don't want to get caught up in the hype that AI is going to solve all of our problems, right? But in this particular case, when you add AI into the solution, you get efficiency, which drives costs down, and you also get better accuracy. And so I think we're very, very close to a tipping point. And I'll give an example again. I'll go back to parasitology and gram stain. ARUP and Mayo Clinic have published their results of implementing these type of solutions, and they've seen their positivity rates go up, right? Where some of the best techs and people in the world still miss things. And so when you, again, add AI with a human, all of a sudden you get the magic happens and you practice better medicine. So at the point where we as as a digital pathology community, we as a medical community understand that you will be practicing better medicine when you pair AI in that workflow to get a better result. I think that switches things. So it'll come from a cost perspective where the scanner manufacturers, the digital pathology platforms, the AI vendors, as we all try to drive those costs down and infuse AI into the whole ecosystem. I think at that point, uh, things switch. And
Mm.
if you go back to all of the theory, like one of my favorite books that I have really based my career on is Crossing the Chasm, and that theory. When you get to the tornado, is where you get to the early majority, the late majority customers, where most of the medical people are today, it goes fairly quick. And I think that inflection point where will happen when we're practicing the best medicine at a better cost, then it's going to get adopted. And I think we're
Yeah.
starting to see that.
Yeah. And really, it's win-win, isn't it? If you have a mindset that you want to work with this technology and see it as a synergy to what you do, if you're the person doing the analysis in the lab, then this is an assistant. It's not something that's going to replace your role. And, it's a very overused analogy, but it's rather like the pilots in the cockpit who have 3 computer systems that are made by different companies. The computers are voting for the next move. And there's somebody else making a non-emotional decision about what's the best thing to do. Or, in our case, what is this analysis? What do we think it is? What's happening here? And I think that's very powerful because, human beings are fallible. And I wonder about also, we see young pathologists coming through now. And I've spoken to people now from 3 separate labs who say they've employed people who've never signed off on a microscope. And that's very interesting. That is a fascinating trend, which in itself has to drive adoption, because who wants to go back to being hunched over a microscope if you're used to working digitally on big monitor screens and being able to zoom in with the click of a mouse? How do you see?
Yeah,
I mean, what's going to happen ultimately to the microscope, do you think?
you see, the microscope will always be there as a backup, right? And I don't see it going away. But if you look at, again, I'll go back to our experience in these clinical pathology areas. Most of the time, once you switch over to a digital and you get used to it and you see the efficiency and accuracy gains, you really only go back in rare circumstances. So I think that'll play out. So I don't see the microscope, disappearing. I think it'll be a tool. It'll be a tool just like digital is a tool.
Yeah. And I guess we could move to a sort of 2-tier analysis structure, 2 tiers of laboratories, so that a digital analysis, you pay more money for that and it's faster and much more efficient. And then there are labs which remain on the old tech, which kind of, they take up the slack, the extra workload. But that's a lower cost way to get to the analysis, and maybe something like that, or maybe in 3rd world countries, for example.
Yeah. So one area that we haven't touched on is the value of now the data that's getting generated. So once that information becomes digital, I think as an industry, we all see that there is going to be power in new things that we just haven't been able to do before. As you start bringing the genomic data and the radiology data and the digital pathology data and the patient history, as you start bringing all that together and you start getting to true multimodal AI, there's going to be there will be insights and value to that data that's now digitized. And one of I do think people are really seeing that with the pharma connection, because pharma is willing to pay for those, for access to patient information, whether it's the digital slide or the EHR, the patient history data. And so that actually may be another thing that can help speed the adoption, is if like a private pathology practice, instead of discarding that data, they actually can now sell that to others and help pay for the digital pathology. I think that's a super interesting route that that we'll be offering to our customers as well.
Yeah, and I think we are at an inflection point in this industry where a lot of disciplines are coming together. And it seems to me that Techcyte are really at the forefront of that. You are bringing different analyses, different domains into a single platform. Let me just ask you a final question I'm interested in, because this is certainly a hugely competitive market. And if we just look at the image analysis piece, I think we're 20 companies in the market more that are purely just doing image analysis. AI, we'd call it now. There are, I don't know how many scanner companies that are focused on scanners, etc. There are other workflow companies like yourself. So in this company, with all these new startups coming in every year, how does Techcyte remain new and relevant going?
If you look at our unique selling proposition and what we bring to the market, it goes back to what I said at the first. When we launched at US CAP Fusion AP, we now have a single platform for both anatomic and clinical pathology. And that is, I think, a super powerful concept. Individual pathologists, I think there are limited use cases. A parasitologist isn't going to care that they're on the same platform with an AP pathologist. An AP pathologist, there's probably some interesting things with cervical cytology and non-GYN cytologies that they would want to see both in one system. But I think if you look the next level up, IT security, integration, like those are some of the biggest inhibitors to actually getting a platform deployed. Purchasing, I think at that level, having a single platform really makes a ton of sense. And if you've got a single platform that is integrating all these clinical data systems, all of the information, I think that, again, I go back to my previous experience. The company that we had inside of Intel went from, $30 million. They're now at $1 billion in revenue because it just kept expanding, right? The platform was the right strategy. I think the platform is the right strategy here, and it will grow as the industry grows and as more things need to come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, well, Ben, it's been a real pleasure, and it's fascinating. And to our audience, I would recommend you take a look at the Fusion platform, because this is really something a little bit different in our industry, which is integrating multiple disciplines and providing a single workflow for pathology. So, Ben, thanks for your time today, and look forward to seeing you somewhere.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.